So for those of you who were not there with me tonight, I went live before the game started. And so I just picked up my computer for the first time since the game ended. And I saw that one of my final chats in there was, is it worth it to start the Eagles defense over the Broncos defense? And I got to tell you, it just gave me kind of a kick because I wouldn't have told anyone to start the Eagles defense over the Broncos defense, but, you know, obviously the Eagles defense was inside my top 10 this week, so I definitely got that wrong, and there's so much to talk about with the Eagles in particular. I got to tell you, man, the Giants won that game by quite a bit, obviously 34-17 finish, but I mean, they jumped out to an early lead, and they controlled all of that game. That was an embarrassment for the Eagles. Like, they got pushed around. I was embarrassed, you know, to watch that game from an Eagles perspective, and I'm not even an Eagles fan, but I got to tell you, like, if I was an Eagles fan, I would not be feeling good about things right now because they just look really incompetent. But we're going to go ahead and recap the whole game for fantasy football and what everything means. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support as well if you like these breakdowns after Thursday night. So I don't think we can start anywhere else other than the Eagles side of the ball, which is... oh, man. I mean, I'm going to talk about their defense, right? I was texting my dad during this game, and he was kind of telling me, I wonder if the league has just kind of figured out the Eagles' defense. And I texted him back, and I said, maybe that's possible. But I do have a couple of thoughts on that, which is that, number one, I still do think of Vic Fangio as a very good defensive coordinator in this league. I think really what it comes down to is it's really hard for any defense to do well in the NFL and in fantasy football when your offense can't get anything done. And I think that's where we have to start with tonight is that the Eagles offense, there's been conversations like through the past couple of weeks. And, you know, at first it was a moot point because the Eagles were 4-0 and they were winning and winning and winning. And then, you know, all of this time there was chirping in the media about like this offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, he doesn't look very good. Like their offense looks really bad. It doesn't look like they have a really good flowing offense right now. And I agreed, but I was also like, you know, it's not going to matter because they're not going to do anything about it because they're winning games. Well, now they've lost 2 straight. And what we've seen through the first 6 games of the Eagles now is that they will go into a hole offensively and not come out of it but for like a couple drives. Like the Eagles in the first half looked like they were going to keep up in this game. And I thought we were in for a good second half. And they didn't do jack squat in the second half. They did nothing in the second half. I mean, Jalen Hurts, they were driving at one point and he threw a big interception, which almost was a pick 6. And that really changed the whole thing. Like at that point, I don't think it wasn't 34-17 yet. I think it was 24-17 or something like that. And they had like a legitimate chance to climb out of this hole. It was 27-17. And they had a legitimate chance to go like score a touchdown, climb out of the hole a little bit. And it was just one of those scenarios where it completely deflated the Philadelphia Eagles' momentum that they really didn't have, but they were starting to build off that drive. You know, nonetheless, I think the reason why I discuss Jalen Hurts in the fashion that I do, which is that in most scenarios I'm going to play him, is because this is what you can get. Like, this wasn't Jalen Hurts' best. And honestly, like, I'm not here to argue with people about Jalen Hurts giving his best at some point soon. I don't know about this whole Eagles offense because Saquon's someone we're going to go through here in a minute, and I don't have a great outlook for him either right now. But I'll tell you this, man. Even in an off nights where Jalen throws his first pick of the year, he still gives you a 20-point day in fantasy football. And I had a question on the live stream earlier tonight before the game started about playing Matt Stafford over Jalen Hurts. And I said to that person, listen, it's not that I think Stafford's a bad play this week. I don't. He's playing the Ravens. I think that that's a good play. The reason I'm always going to go with Hurts over Stafford is because Hurts has a really good floor. Like, this is another one of those floor type games where he throws a touchdown and then he runs one in because of the tush push. And the tush push, we can have that own conversation, right? Like, that is a conversation in and of itself. What I personally think about the tush push, though, it doesn't matter. It's going to be here for at least the duration of this season. And that's the bottom line, is that Jalen Hurts still does have a weekly touchdown edge on the ground because of the tush push. And that's the reason why someone like Jalen Hurts is not, I'm honestly not going to tell many people to sit Jalen Hurts unless you have Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson when he's healthy or Jaden Daniels. Like Jalen Hurts, I still consider a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football because of this rushing upside that he gives you on a weekly basis, not because of the yardage, but because of that floor with the tush push at the goal line. That's just the reality. So Jalen Hurts is going to continue to be a guy that I really do think is going to be a must start still moving forward. And I will admit, this offense is not good, which is fascinating because it really, like, if you think about it for a second, this offense being as bad as it looks right now is mind-boggling because what we've seen from Philadelphia over the years with Jalen Hurts is a lot of bumpiness, right? So Shane Steichen comes in and elevates Jalen Hurts to a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in 2022. Then Shane Steichen leaves. They have a down year offensively, and Jalen Hurts looks like he regresses a little bit. Then they get Kellen Moore as the play caller last year, and he revives that offense and utilizes everybody as they should be. Well, now this year we're back to that off year, that dip year, where, again, I don't think this offensive coordinator knows what he's really doing about all those playmakers because he has way too much talent to not only, like, the Saquon numbers, like, just to go into him really quick, it's inexcusable to see that he only had 12 carries in this game. And that's not to say that, like, particularly towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, it's like, okay, obviously you can't just be running the ball nonstop. Like, they didn't have a lead. They were playing from behind. But, like, the first half, they had so many opportunities, and Saquon looked really good in the first half, particularly that first couple of drives. And then they just stopped using him. It was, like, inexplicable. Like, I don't understand how you can have success as an offensive coordinator and then choose to move away from that success. Saquon was averaging 4.8 yards per carry tonight, but he had really big runs in that first drive alone. It was really weird. Like, Saquon Barkley is not being used as he was last year. And I predicted that all offseason when I said, I think Saquon Barkley's about to regress this year in fantasy because history is just not on his side. I went through research all offseason about running backs with 350 plus touches in the past 15 years. Like, every one of them loses volume or gets hurt when they're given the same amount of volume. But they're cutting Saquon's volume almost in half. So it's very odd to kind of watch from just an outsider's perspective and watch them move away from what was really working tonight, which was the running game at the beginning with Saquon Barkley. So I got to tell you, with all these issues that the Eagles are having offensively right now, Saquon Barkley, I was generous to him this week. And not because I felt like I needed to be generous, but because I thought the matchup was going to be really good for Saquon Barkley. I put him inside the first tier of my running back rankings this week. I can tell you this, he won't be back for a while because until I see something different. Because this Eagles offense, luckily they've got a long extended period to figure it out. They're basically going to have a mini bye week. But right now, this Eagles offense looks pretty abysmal. And they don't look like they know what they're doing from a play calling perspective. So Saquon Barkley, he's in running back 2 territory for me right now. Because it doesn't look good. And I don't really see how it gets much better. But with Jalen Hurts, again, he's in a different perspective because the rushing upside and just because he has talent, from a receiver perspective, I'm still going to consider Jalen Hurts a must-start quarterback moving forward. Whereas with Saquon Barkley, we can start to have discussions about whether you'd rather play Ashton Genty or Saquon Barkley or somebody I'm trying to think of someone who had way less draft capital and is doing better than him. Cam Skattebo, I guess it might be an example. We can have discussions. I'm not putting Saquon into must-start territory right now. I don't think he deserves that. Now, with the receiving game, Dallas Goedert continues to have a fantastic fantasy season, which is pretty crazy to think about because Dallas Goedert, in years past has been third fiddle, really, behind A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith very consistently. Well, I think, again, it just goes to the Eagles, and that offense right now feels like it's this close to just completely falling apart. And Jalen Hurts is number one guy as far as who he can trust mentally right now, I think is Dallas Goedert, because it's clear to me that he's going into Dallas Goedert in times of crisis, right? Like, Dallas Goedert has been there for Jalen Hurts quite a bit. A lot of those short touchdown throws are going to Dallas Goedert, which we saw again tonight on that like 3-yard pitch out to the sidelines. Basically, is where Dallas Goedert caught that first touchdown that they scored tonight. So Dallas Goedert, 9 catches, 110 yards and a touchdown. It's not that I think that's going to be sustainable, but I do think we're at this point with Dallas Goedert where it's like you can kind of count on him to be red zone used, because that's been the case like all year. They've been doing that kind of play all year to Dallas Goedert, and it has been working to the Eagles' credit. Like, I'm going to bash on the Eagles more tonight, so I do want to be fair and give them credit. Like, they do have something that works outside of the tush push, which is that play to Dallas Goedert. They continue to run that like pitch style play. It is working, so I will give them that. And I do think for that reason, I consider Dallas Goedert to be someone that is in tight end 1 territory. Like, the red zone usage of this guy is clearly there. And also, just in times of crisis where Jalen Hurts is trying to find somebody, I do think we are in position now to where he can be relied upon to be a consistent tight end 1 for your team. A.J. Brown did not do better than Wan'Dale Robinson, so I should have kept A.J. Brown where he was ranked originally. But he did do fine. Like 6 catches for 80 yards. That's not going to kill anyone this week who played A.J. Brown. That's 14 points in a full PPR format. That's 11 points in a half PPR format. That's fine, right? Like, you're not going to get killed. That was one of those situations where maybe he broke the mold a little bit as far as like, okay, it looks like we do have a game where he can give you middle ground performances, right? And I don't think that that's like a consistent floor or anything like that, but I do think it's worth noting that, like, hey, he didn't come out and have a massive game tonight, but he also wasn't a destructive force for your team in a negative way. So A.J. Brown, 6 catches, 80 yards, I do think is slightly encouraging, actually, if I think about it that hard, because, again, like, it didn't crush your team. And I think that counts right now with this Eagles offense, is that players like Saquon are crushing your team. You know, but A.J. Brown, it's not going to crush you. That really won't crush you. So A.J. Brown, a little bit encouraged, to be honest with you, about his production in this game. And then Devonta Smith, 4 catches for 49 yards. Looked like I would say, like, Devonta Smith came through and had some big plays. And he did have, like, Jalen missed him on an over-the-top throw tonight, too. Like, I don't know if anybody saw this play, because it started to get a little bit boring at this point. But Jalen had Devonta Smith for an easy touchdown. Like, Devonta Smith it would have been like a 70-yard touchdown. Devonta Smith was wide open down the field, and he overthrew him by a good, like, 10 yards. So, Hurts' deep ball has not been on the past couple of weeks. And, again, I think there's just something deeper going on in this offense that we are not privy to. And we saw reports earlier in the week that there was a players-only meeting, and Saquon and Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown got together, and they were trying to figure out their differences, how to make the offense better, blah, blah, blah. But clearly there's something deeper going on here, because we don't know what the full story is. But I can tell you this. I've seen enough to the point where I know that something deeper is going on with this offense. And it worries me for everybody except Jalen Hurts and someone like Dallas Goedert. Like Saquon Barkley, again, I view him as a running back too at this point. I view A.J. Brown as still this like flexible guy, and Devonta Smith basically in that same range, because all these guys, none of them are being consistent enough to be in your lineup consistently without hurting your team. And we haven't seen enough massive games from any of those guys to where it's like, okay, is it worth always having them in the lineup? Because like A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley in particular, you would in previous years never think to bench those guys. I think it's worth considering other options at this point. Again, if you have options like Cam Skattebo, who may have sat the bench for a lot of people tonight, and I ranked him too low, and we're about to get into the Giants, but like my whole point is that the stars in Philly right now, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and I'll throw in Devonta Smith, they're not steady right now, and they are going to be considered very flexible and very interchangeable for me moving forward when I do fantasy rankings and start-sit decisions. And again, go post something on FS Roundup. Utilize our start-sit polls on fsroundup.com weekly now because of these Philadelphia options, man. Because I'll tell you this, like if it's me, voting on those polls, if you're lining up Saquon Barkley with Courtland Sutton next week, for example, I might go with Courtland Sutton. Now, before I move off the Eagles, again, I want to reiterate the offensive coordinator, man. I don't expect them to fire him, but I am curious about what the move is going to be because it's not working. Like, clearly something is broken in this Eagles offense, and I will say Vic Fangio in this defense, man, that was a bad call by me. I think, we had to factor in that they missed Jalen Carter tonight, which was a big loss. It always will be a big loss, but even with Jalen Carter, I'm not sure they would have done much better tonight because they got bullied. They got bullied by the Giants, man. Adrian, appreciate your super chat. I will address it after the breakdown. Now let's get into the Giants, the fun part. We got the bad out of the way first. Now let's get into the good. And who didn't have a good night for the Giants, right? Like, you could have played Jackson Dart, and I know somebody on the live stream beforehand asked me about Dart versus Penix, and I ended up saying I'm leaning towards Penix in this game because there was nothing logically there that I could have said, hey, listen, I think Dart is a really good play because of X, Y, and Z. And I think I overlooked the rushing upside. This is the third straight game, and I think they had a stat up tonight. At one point that showed that Jackson Dart was the third quarterback in NFL history behind Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts to have 3 straight games to begin his career with 50-plus rushing yards. So I think we are at that point now where we can confidently say, like, Jackson Dart's legs are going to be a factor every single week. And you could basically add 5 points to his score in fantasy football every week from his rushing upside. Like, he did go down at one point tonight, and it was a little bit frightening, not just from a Giants fan's perspective, and I'm not a Giants fan, but, like, not just watching the Giants as a fan, but also watching the Giants as an offense. Like, if they miss Jackson Dart, they're screwed because this guy clearly is the best that they've got, and he energizes that team so freaking much. So Jackson Dart, 195 through the air, again, is not the best night. 17-25, though, that's a really good night, and 1 touchdown is going to get it done when you're able to get 60 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So in fantasy football, at this point, Jackson Dart has kind of entered into borderline quarterback 1 territory. I will say that because, again, I think the part that I overlooked tonight with talking to someone who asked me about Penix versus Dart is that I was not of the belief yet that Dart's legs were going to be a consistent threat. Not that he can't. Like, obviously, if you watched Jackson Dart through his first 2 games, the guy can run. I just didn't think that he would do it that often. He's pretty willing to do it. Like, 12 rushes tonight. And he got injured again because he kept running. So it's like, that's the reason I'm like, okay, does it realistically continue, especially after the injury tonight? I'm going to say that I think it does because it adds an element to his game. So at this point, I would say you can add basically 5 fantasy points onto Jackson Dart's floor, which is probably around, 15 points when you add on that rushing floor. So I would consider him, quarterback 1 territory moving forward in fantasy football. And, I think that Jackson Dart, from a throwing perspective, he's going to be capped all year because he doesn't have the weapons, particularly without Malik Neighbors. But I do think when they get Darius Slayton back, it will add an element to this offense because he's more of not downfield, but like he's more of an over-the-middle possession receiver that they don't really have with Wan'Dale, who did have a good night in fantasy. But I do think that we will see kind of capped performances through the air from Jackson Dart moving forward. I don't think this is an outlier. I think we will continue to see him struggle through the air in some weeks to get like 250 passing yards. But I will say this, man, like that rushing upside gives him a floor that's really safe. Now, Cam Skattebo, I told a lot of people that I'm going to be sitting Cam Skattebo in a lot of situations, and I was very, very wrong. No other way around it. That one sucks because he has a hat trick tonight and almost 100 yards on the ground. 5.2 a carry is really dominant. And I will say, like, if you didn't watch this game and you're watching this after the fact, Cam Skattebo, for the majority of the game, honestly wasn't that efficient. And that was my whole concern with him, is that he's just not been very efficient this year. Like, if you look at his season, he's averaging like less than 4 yards per carry. He's running behind this offensive line that I think is still shaky. and he's just not on a great offense. So that was my whole reasoning for not ranking him very high this week, and also because of the fact that the Eagles, I thought, were a very good defense. But there's a couple things that were proven to me tonight. Number one, I need to continue to just fade Thursday night defenses. That's the fact. Like, good defenses, I still consider the Eagles a good defense when they're all healthy, and Vic Fangio's that defensive coordinator. I still think it's good. But the Rams defense, I think, is good. The Seahawks defense, I think, is good. And it's been 3 straight weeks now where we've seen good defenses in fantasy not do good in fantasy on Thursday nights. So I need to just not overlook any more Thursday night in fantasy football defenses. Like, that's a factor that you have to consider. And the Eagles defense should not have been on the top 12. And Cam Skattebo, man, he's just going to – I mean, he's clearly the lead back. Right, and one of the other factors I said with Cam Skattebo was that I think Tyrone Tracy being back will affect him a little bit more. It's not. Like, he's clearly galvanized this team's energy. I mean, because it's not just, like, you could look at the stat line and you could also watch the games and make a pretty easy determination that Cam Skattebo is their best back. But if you just look at – don't even watch him play. Just look at the energy of the offense when he's on the field versus when he's not on the field. Like, Devin Singletary, when he came in for a couple rushes, there was no energy, and same with Tracy. Like, Cam Skattebo is a central piece to this offense at this point. And they've got this, like, lightning in the bottle aspect to the Giants where it's like they have such a young team, their core is really young, and they've got so much energy and positivity and enthusiasm to where it just might continue to work. Honestly, because, like, in theory, they shouldn't have beat the Eagles tonight, but they dominated them. They bullied them. And that was where you saw 5.2 yards per carry, particularly those last 2 drives when Cam Skattebo just started to take control. Like, he really, really just started to gouge them on the ground. And they were playing bully ball on the Eagles, which is the name of the game for the Eagles. They embarrassed them. And Cam Skattebo was a huge reason for that. So if you have Cam Skattebo, I would say that this guy is, I mean, it's hard to not call him a must start at this point. I mean, it sucks that I was wrong about that and I told people to bench him. But I just, I don't know what to say other than the fact that I was wrong about that. That's an early what I got wrong. And it feels bad because, you know, the logic behind it makes less sense now that you watch the game and you see the Eagles defense play the way that they did, which was not only just like they were off tonight, but it was just like uninspired football, and they got bullied. And that's a determining factor for me moving forward is, are the Eagles actually that good? Because they got bullied tonight. So concerning for the Eagles defense, not concerning for Cam Skattebo, who I do think is a really good asset moving forward. Now let's get into the receivers. Again, who really didn't have a good night outside of people who played Theo Johnson probably. But to start out with Wan'Dale Robinson, he ends up being a really good play. That's 24 or 20 points in fantasy in a full PPR format. Good night. Like, he was in my top 30 this week. Nobody really barked me for it. So I think people saw what was coming for Wan'Dale. I think really what the case is that with Jackson Dart, again, there's a revitalized sense in the Giants offense and in the fantasy community with the Giants that Wan'Dale Robinson can get it done because he has a legitimate quarterback. So this 6 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown, it's hard to know what the role will be like when Darius Slayton comes back, but I will tell you this. Wan'Dale Robinson's a must-roster guy. Like, he should not be on waiver wires at this point. He's too important because, you know, even when you think about who took the role for Darius Slayton tonight, well, Lil Jordan Humphrey had a role in that, and Jalen Hyatt did as well. Lil Jordan Humphrey is not someone I would consider rostering moving forward because I think when Darius Slayton comes back, Lil Jordan Humphrey probably becomes a little bit less relevant in this offense. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they choose to jettison off Jalen Hyatt to the bench. But Jalen Hyatt made some plays tonight that I think Darius Slayton would probably make. I think a lot of those, like, 10-yard out routes, that would be Darius Slayton running those plays. And Jalen Hyatt made some good catches on those plays. So I do think Lil Jordan Humphrey is a little bit of a mirage because a lot of deep balls were his way. He made some nice plays on them, but you know, the other thing with Jackson Dart is Dart realistically should have had 4 total touchdowns tonight. He had 2 beautiful throws at the back of the end zone, one to Lil Jordan Humphrey, and the second one was to Wandale, I think. Both of those throws were unbelievable. Unbelievable throws. Perfectly placed, like right at the back shoulder both times. And they were dropped by both of his players. Like, it was tight coverage. Yes, it was good coverage by the Eagles, but you couldn't have handed the ball off to those guys better than Jackson Dart threw those passes. And for that reason, Jackson Dart, again, I say is a quarterback one, fringe quarterback one in fantasy. And I would also say his pass catchers, whoever they are, have upside. And the reason I say Wandale is because I think Wandale remains involved regardless of who's available at this point. Wandale is the guy that you want, and he shouldn't be on waivers. And Lil Jordan Humphrey, I can't say the same for. And Jalen Hyatt, I definitely can't say the same for. And Theo Johnson, I think, is the real problem in this one because Theo had opportunities, not as many as the receivers did tonight. And I think that was the problem last week. What we saw is that, I think someone like Theo Johnson, based on usage last week, like he was more used last week than he was this week, but a lot of that upside came from the end zone. So I don't trust that as much as I trust someone like Dallas Goedert, who's being used kind of all over the place. Mason Taylor, who's being used all over the place with the Jets. Darren Waller, who's being used all over the place with the Miami Dolphins. So Theo Johnson, I've still got capped, but overall, man, what a good night for the Giants. What a bad night for the Eagles. Eagles defense sucked. Eagles offense sucked. Giants dominated them basically the whole game. So that was the recap there for fantasy football. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll answer my super chat from Adrian. Appreciate you waiting. Will Breece Hall get traded? And if he does, then who's the new running back for the Jets? Do you know anyone to keep an eye on or stash? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Breece Hall, in theory, like they would be better off keeping him, obviously. He's clearly the best running back in the backfield over there, and it's not close. But obviously you have to factor in that the Jets are the Jets, and also they're in this position to where it's like, why do we want to keep this guy when he clearly doesn't want to be here? So obviously there's playoff contending teams that need someone like Breece Hall, and they would really, really highly benefit from it. So there's enough steam behind this one, there has been, basically for the whole offseason, that I could see a world where Breece Hall gets traded, but I don't believe that they would just go with Isaiah Davis full time, because like Breece Hall or Braylon Allen's done basically for the year, and outside of Breece Hall they have Isaiah Davis, and that's basically it. So like I can't imagine that they'll just do a Breece Hall for draft capital move. I would imagine it's a Breece Hall for draft capital plus a running back. Maybe somebody like, I don't know. I mean, a backup somewhere like Brian Robinson Jr. or something like that. Obviously, the 49ers aren't going to trade for Breece Hall, but like my point being is that they'll get another backup. So obviously, you want to keep an eye on Isaiah Davis because in theory right now, he would be the next man up. But, the other end of that spectrum is I do not think that the Jets would trade Breece and not get another running back in addition to the trade, because they're not going to have Braylon Allen for the rest of the season, basically. So, yeah, it's hard to envision them trading him without getting another running back in return. But it's not hard to envision them trading him because there's enough steam, there's enough good teams that are interested, I bet, because he's a really good player. I mean, Breece Hall has been treated like garbage in New York, and I've been saying that for months now. I think that Breece Hall is a top-tier player in the NFL who's not being treated like it. So put him somewhere else, and I bet he'll do really well. So I hope for his sake he gets traded, and for fantasy's sake he gets traded. But, right now, the one to watch for is Isaiah Davis, obviously. Appreciate the super chat, Adrian. And then we'll go ahead and end it there. So like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. And if you have a start sit question you didn't get it answered, because this isn't really a Q&A session, go to FS Roundup, post a start sit poll. It's completely free to do this. You get live results and feedback from the community, and you're also able to vote on other people's polls as well. Become a premium member, get access to advanced features like the automatic waiver wire tool. You can plug in your team and sync it up. You can use the comparison feature. You can utilize my rankings on a weekly basis, top 250. Lots of great, applications and lots of great features that are really advanced and very unique to us. So love you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the video tomorrow. Peace out.